We are back at it again. You can see my friend is Hayes Sounds, what they call me. Let's get straight into it. Black Music Archives channel, shout out to them. This is one of the greatest breakdowns of not only music, but Michael Jackson's voice explained. With that being said, let's go.
When Baby Michael debuted, it was clear that this was a once-in-a-generation talent, with critics praising its dynamic, soaring soprano lead vocals, which sent the Jackson 5 to the top of the charts. There's no doubt about it, the voice on these earliest Jackson 5 recordings is that of a soprano, and it's reflected in the writing and arranging of the earliest recordings. The middle fifth is the note central to the voice. Most of the notes in a composition lie in this range to keep the voice in its correct tessitura. The middle fifth for the soprano voice lies around A flat to E, E flat.
You went to school to learn, girl, things you never
The opening line of ABC covers G to E. We'll compare that to pop gospel soprano Coco.
Baby, when you're around me, you just can't do no wrong. You went to school to learn, girl, and whenever I need you, you're always right there.
The middle fifth for Coco's Sunshine is G to D. So Michael is singing in the keys and arrangements and covering the range of a fully developed adult woman as a child.
That's crazy. Shout out to Coco.
Chaka Khan would even cover Michael's Got to Be There, and she would have to lower the key to sing it in live performance.
That's insane.
That is how high his music is sitting. We tend to compliment children who can sing or play music at the level of an adult. However, in our daily lives, we instruct children to wait until they are a certain age to perform specific activities because doing things before the body and mind are ready can have negative consequences in the future. The same principle should be applied to children's voices.
It could be very easy to ruin a young voice by having training in singing too soon, because these muscles were not developed, so the body uses whatever there is. And the thing that I say to young singers to try to frighten them into not sort of taking themselves too seriously before the body is really ready for it is that these vocal cords are unforgiving. If we abuse them, if we use them in the wrong way too early, they stretch, and like any ligament, they don't go back.
Although Michael's boy soprano produces many exciting moments, he is not being set up for long-term success and vocal health by having to maintain the vocal range, power, and workload of a fully grown adult. Immediately after the Jackson 5's first album release, his touring career began. In the 2 years following the release of the album, he has completed over 120 touring dates. His Bad Tour ran for the same amount of time, completing the same amount of dates. Francis E. Howard and Alfred Bernard Bach advised that young voices in development should not go beyond 1 octave of range, and a child should not sing above high E or F. The most appropriate song for a child in the Jackson 5 discography would be Who's Loving You, which has a central singing range of middle D to high D. In the middle and towards the end of the song, there are some sung high Gs, and you will notice that the texture of the note is raspy. Rasp is a general indicator that your voice is at its limit.
Yeah.
F is the highest recommended note for a boy soprano to sing. And you'll notice that Baby Michael's top notes during this time period are consistently raspy. The altitude of pitch, which is attained before breaking into the head voice with young children, is regulated by the amount of muscular exertion they put forth. Up until the voice change, boys can often force the chest voice several notes higher than women sopranos. In layman's terms, Baby Michael is belting these high soprano notes by sheer muscular force.
It is so important not to try to use those muscles before they are fully developed, because if you do that, the tendency is to use muscles in the neck. That's because the emphasis is being put on the wrong muscles, and they probably started doing it much too early, because these muscles were not developed, so the body uses whatever there is.
I don't know why I love you.
The best example of this is I Don't Know Why I Love You off the group's 1970 album, ABC.
'Cause I love you. Oh, sugar baby, I can't take it. I don't know,
On this song alone, Michael belts more than 20 high E's. And with each one, you can hear how raspy the voice is, and the voice actually begins to give out on the recording. Don't Know Why I Love You is considered one of Baby Michael's most incredible vocal performances. But you must ask yourself, how many times did he sing that before this take and after this take?
Yeah.
Zooming out, these kinds of voice cracks are present throughout the entire album ABC. And the range Michael displays on the album is nearly 4 octaves, well beyond the recommended singing range of a child. While this record is considered one of their best, it is the best example of a piece of work being delivered at the expense of pushing a young, developing voice beyond its natural limits. Many studies of the young male developing voice come from Europe, where boy choirs are very popular. The general rule of thumb for boy voices is that boy altos typically become tenors, while boy sopranos typically develop into baritones and basses. A boy's voice generally changes after a significant growth spurt. 1972 is roughly the start of Michael's voice change. In January of 1972, he's still the same size, and the voice sounds the same as it always has.
I really wonder, like, in terms of a vocal coach, like, was Michael coached into singing that way, or like did he naturally sing that way? Because I'm like, again, like, if you hear any of his younger music or any of the music as a child, it's like he's literally belting these songs. So I'm like, if I'm a producer, I'm like, why is this child belting these songs? Like, you can be in a lower tone. You don't have to use all, Like, you're a child. Like, don't worry about all that. Like, you can sound good, just ABC. Like, you ain't gotta, baby. It's like, you ain't gotta do all that. I think a lot of that's on the producer and whoever the vocal coach was. I don't know why they had Michael, even though it sound cool, but I don't know why they have Michael belting these songs, son. Like, it's really crazy when you listen back to these songs. Especially if you, like, isolate the vocals, make them a cappella. It's like, bruh. And then you can hear the change, like you say, like he better go into.
He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song.
In February of 1972, he releases his debut single, Rockin' Robin.
He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song.
When he performs the song 7 months later, you notice that he's gotten taller. And we hear a thickening in the vocal quality compared to the original recording.
He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song. He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song. All the little birdies on Jaybird Street love to hear the rhyme and go tweet, tweet, tweet. Rock your Robin, oh, rock, rock, rock your Robin.
When a boy's voice changes, the speaking voice is the first to deepen, and the singing voice is second. That would explain how he can still sing Rockin' Robin and the Jackson 5 material in its original keys, despite his speaking voice being deeper.
Well, most of our girls, they get kind of shy, you know. We met in Canada, and we had a good time together. Came to the hotel, and we talked a while.
He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song. He rocks in the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song. On the treetops all day long, hopping in a Bible and singing his song.
Boys who sing experience a voice lowering in different ways. In the musical journal, one singer described his voice lowering as having the high range decrease before the entire center of the voice dropped. While Michael can still sing in the original keys, we notice he's now beginning to remove his trademark high notes. On a song like I Want You Back, he's singing a lower option instead of the original higher option.
You went to school to learn, girl, thing you never knew before. You went to school to learn, girl, thing you never knew before.
On Rockin' Robin, he avoids the A flat completely.
Rock a Robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight. Yeah! Rock a Robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight. You got it, Tito!
As a boy soprano,
You got it, Tito! Like, I ain't doing that.
Michael's voice became raspy around a high F and G. But if you hear him sing The Love You Save, the voice starts to get raspy around B and C. And the voice seems to cut off completely at E. There's been a loss of about a fifth of vocal range at the top of the voice. The consequence of encouraging forte singing is to change a boy soprano rapidly into a boy alto. They will generally sing alto equally forte because their vocal cords have lost their elasticity due to overstraining. Alfred Bach, 1894. Not only was Michael singing very high, he was singing very loud.
Okay with the headband.
Singing high and singing loud while the body is at its most vulnerable is very harmful. A boy's voice will usually change around the ages 10 to 15 years old. While in 1972, Michael is well within this age range, there is still a fair chance that the overuse of the higher range but have prematurely lowered his voice.
I was just thinking about this song while he was talking.
By 1974, we hear the deepening of the singing voice, and the keys of songs are now beginning to be adjusted to accommodate his changing voice.
Never can say goodbye. No, no, no. Never can say goodbye. No, no, no. I never, 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 never can say goodbye.
So it's safe to say the entire center of the voice has dropped about a fourth or a fifth.
Wow.
In Emil Binky and Lennox Brown's book, The Child's Voice is Treatment to and After Development, a survey of 190 voice teachers asks, is it safe for boys to sing through puberty? 158 participants said a boy should not sing while his voice changes.
Wow.
Responses included, most assuredly not, certainly not. I have found that a large majority of young men who begin using their voice before it is settled tend to injure their vocal organs permanently, causing remarkable changes in the quality. When a boy's voice begins to break, he should cease to use it. In a recent Twitter discussion, Michael Jackson fans likened his best singing years to what he did before his voice changed. And that is the very reason why voice teachers do not advise heavy singing on a child.
First of all, whoever says Michael not a vocalist or couldn't sing clearly weren't listening to the music. All I gotta do is point you to Butterflies, bro, or point you to Speechless. Like, stop it. Y'all weren't listening. Stop it. You Were Not Alone. Come on, like, stop it. Yeah, he stopped being able to sing certain time. He stopped singing certain type of songs, and yeah, but to say that he just couldn't, nah, we're not doing that. But I hear what you're saying, though.
A boy's voice will begin to settle around the age of 18 or 19, which also is the general recommendation for a boy to begin serious singing. The heaviest changes in a boy's voice generally occurs around the ages 13 to 15. During this time, his vocal range is most limited and also the most sensitive. It's most evident when you hear him sing older material. The voice can't go up, nor can it go down. It stays in one place. That is how we get the songs made between 1973 and 1975, such as Dancing Machine or Life of the Party, where all of the singing stays in one place.
Automatic, systematic, full of color, self-contained, tuned and channeled to your vibe.
As a boy's voice nears the end of puberty, some may experience a pubertal range expansion, which means an increasing of the vocal range on both ends of the voice. Michael's late-stage puberty voice is crystallized on the Jacksons albums. 1976 through 79 is between the ages of 18 and 21, which is when a boy's voice begins to settle. And on these records, we can hear an overall increase in the vocal range. Between 1973 and 75, when the voice was going through its most radical changes, he only had about 1 octave usable voice. We have songs such as Enjoy Yourself and Think Happy. Which shows that the belting range has increased about a fifth up to high F. The bottom of the voice has gained about an octave. The game. To low D and low C. And he can even make sounds up to soprano high D flat. While the vocal range has increased in both directions, Michael's music has consistently been arranged so that his highest available notes are those that are used the most. If you recall, the middle fifth for the soprano voice is G or A flat to high E, which is where he sang as a child. The middle fifth for the mezzo soprano is F to C, and for contralto, D to A. Two big hits from this era are Blame It on the Boogie and Love You. The middle fifth for those recordings are E to B. For a male, this is high. And when it comes to live performance, this is not an area he can sing in comfortably. As we can hear it with the chopping of phrases, the removing of notes, and the lowering of the keys.
I still don't know why he sung this song the way he did.
Solo career, the music will gradually get higher, as we hear with Off the Wall. Songs such as Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which sits on high E. If we've learned anything about Michael's voice so far, is that when it rasps, that's a sign of the voice reaching its limits.
When the word is on your shoulder, if you're gaining with the feeling, you can shout out all you want to. If you take the chance and do it.
Listening to songs such as She's Out of My Life and Off the Wall, you'll notice the voice starts to get raspy around G, which suggests that G or A may be the top of his comfortable singing range.
I wanna ride all night, girl.
On a song such as Rock With You, not only is the top note raspy, but is primarily straight tone with a little to no vibrato.
I wanna
But his diction or pronunciation is the most significant indicator that he is singing too high. While Michael makes excellent music, a common criticism among listeners is that you can't always figure out what he's saying. Here, young Michael is forming clear words on high D and E.
I'm gonna teach you all about love, yeah.
Here, Michael as an adult is singing the same notes,
I won't be complaining, 'cause your love is alright. Ooh.
but we can't clearly understand what he's saying. For more context, the compromised clarity in speech was also a criticism of singers such as Sylvester and Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees. And that's because it is difficult to articulate words clearly when singing at the very low or very high ends of one's vocal range.
So the C could throw you, so just be careful that you keep it as pure as you can and drop your jaw on O. Is a cold, and if it throws you too much, you can say is a gold, put a G on it. It'll sound like a C.
In a voice lesson with Seth Riggs, Riggs instructs Michael to modify the vowels to sing the high notes. Modifying the shape of a vowel is a common way singers access the high note.
Your love is alright. Ooh. Keep on.
But if he's modifying entire words or phrases, it's a sign of him singing too high for comfort. But to grasp just how high Michael sings, you have to look at Thriller. Michael
That's what like Jesus. Like I don't know if it's because he's saying that way his entire life that I don't know why Michael, at least for the first 2 solo albums, like he still was in that range. I think it wasn't until Bad to where he's like, hey, I'm done doing all that. Like, I'm done doing that. I'm done doing that. I think maybe in Smooth Criminal, he was like, I don't know. And are you okay? In the ad-lib, like, I don't know. But outside that, like, you ain't getting a lot of, like, you're not getting all that. I think by the Bad album, you're like, all right, bro, like, we chilling. Like, so that's why a lot of people say the decline happened after Thriller in terms of vocally, because he's just like, by the time it gets to 30, you're like, ah. But yeah, I don't know why he decided to sing that way. I still love him, but I don't know, like, why he decided to sing these songs so high, Mike. Like, he didn't need to do that.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album is the pinnacle of his career.
It's a great honor. I'm very happy. I'd like to thank Epic Records, the best record company in the world.
Setting records and propelling him to a level of superstardom that has yet to be surpassed. From a vocal standpoint, Thriller's important because it marks the end of certain things, but also the beginning of certain things that Michael would further explore in future work. Thriller is the end of Michael being able to sing in a really high vocal range. And singing, the term tessitura is the range within the overall vocal range where most of the singing is done. For the style of music Jackson performed, Michael's voice would mostly be considered as a high tenor or male alto. A male alto refers to the highest male voice that sings in a similar pitch and range to the contralto and sometimes the mezzo-soprano. In the period between the voice settling on the Jackson's albums to Thriller, Michael's vocal range spanned tenor low C to soprano high B flat,
he was singing in range of
with most of the singing occurring around low E to high E. The primary singing range for the female contralto is low E to high E. Then you have a song such as Wanna Be Starting Something, which sits on low G to high E.
I took my baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street, they said she
The
had
tessitura for the mezzo-soprano voice is low G to high G. The tessitura for Whitney Houston is low G to high F. So Whitney can sing and did sing this song comfortably without needing to make any changes in the key or arrangement.
You're stuck in the middle, and the pain is thunder. My baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street, they said she had a breakdown.
Just know that if I can find that performance, I'm going to do a reaction to that, to Michael singing Michael. I'm letting you know right now. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Up until this point, it's
My baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street, they said she had a breakdown.
what this is saying is that Michael Jackson, up until this point, is singing in the keys and ranges of women. As a child, his music sat too high for most women, but as an adult, the music was comfortable for most women with mid and low range voices, which means it is more than likely too high for him.
That's crazy to think about. Like, it was too high for women.
While the
Better
voice
sing it,
doesn't
Dion.
vary much from the previous years, there's a significant difference in how Michael is now beginning to use harmonies and vocal layering. In earlier material with the Jackson 5, there are instances of Michael singing in harmony. On Off the Wall, Michael utilizes vocal doubling for the lead vocal of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough.
That makes it happen. It asks no questions why.
He uses a similar vocal doubling technique on Billie Jean.
Claims that I'm the one, but the kid is not my son.
But on Thriller, Michael structures his harmonies to now create a wall of sound.
I could miss this thriller night. There ain't no second chance.
Stacking various harmonies on top of each other. But not just stacking the harmonies, but giving each harmony its own individual movement.
Therapy wide.
The way Michael arranges his background vocals is almost as if he's composing for a choir or multiple voices, but all of the voices are him. You'll also find Michael's low notes within the harmonies and the wall of sound.
Paradise. Now is the time, girl.
Michael has low notes extending down to the bass and baritone range, but he likes to keep them in the back of the music. When you hear songs such as Carousel, For All Time, or Human Nature, you'll notice that the low notes are in the front of the track.
Looking out into the nighttime, reaching out to touch a stranger.
But he likes to sing his lower register with very little volume in comparison to how he uses the rest of his voice. With singers, many have a certain aesthetic that they like to base their sound upon. The Schubert lead, Death and the Maiden, has a written low D at the end.
But I tried to avoid the D natural because I found that first of all, I could sing it, sure, but I found that it took me into a part of my voice that sounded very masculine. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to change that personality to a different sound.
So she took a higher option.
And on these quiet days, the rain may wash away.
If Michael likes to sing the bottom of his voice very quietly and keep it in the back of the music, he more than likely prefers the aesthetic of a higher pitched sound. His love for the higher sound would also lead to early voice issues. According to some fans within the Michael Jackson community, the first of Michael's voice issues can be traced to the Victory Tour, namely nodules. Nodules are a bump or bumps on the vocal cords that prevent the cords from closing properly. Because the cords aren't closing correctly, it allows more air to pass through, which creates a raspy or airy sound. Comparing Michael singing the same songs on the Victory Tour to the Triumph Tour, there is more rasp in the voice.
When this is over, I love you will be so right. When this is over, I love you will be so right.
And that's only like a 3-year difference. Like only a 3-year difference. You can hear you can hear the raspiness by the time we get to the Victory Tour. It's crazy.
If I'm always out of sight, if I'm always out of sight.
Some fans will say Michael's rasp was a stylistic choice rather than a product of vocal misuse, as James Brown inspired him.
I love Michael Monell.
This is a man.
Rasp was present throughout James Brown's entire voice. Brown was also notorious for living a very hard lifestyle, indulging in activities such as drugs and alcohol, all of which dry the voice out. A dry voice means working harder or straining to sing, and straining leads to nodules. Nodules produce a raspy sound. Brown was also known as the hardest working man in show business. Overuse of the vocal cords is also a leading cause of nodules. This is what the vocal cords look like when producing a raspy tone. So whether it's style or vocal damage, all of these singers are engaging in activities that promote vocal distress and damage. And it is then that rasp becomes an identifiable part of their sound, which they will then lean into.
Which is crazy because you gotta think if Michael just did the albums and didn't have to tour, his voice probably could have got saved. His voice is still fine, but he would have been fine if he just didn't have to tour and tour live. Like, and we're not using background vocals during this time. Not till Dangerous tour to where he started using background, like actual background vocals, or bad tracks. Like the fact he had a tour, he toured like, I want to say from like 70 to like 81, really like 10 years straight, roughly about 10 years straight. So not only is his body going through the changes, puberty, but then he's still belting these songs. Then he got to refine his range, then still belt those vocals. Like, imagine if Michael, as beautiful as his voice is, as great as his voice is, imagine if we didn't really hear Michael till like 18. Imagine we didn't really hear if Michael didn't start singing until professionally until like the Destiny album, roughly. Can you imagine? Like, that's even more insane. We got all that classic music, and he was still going through changes and had to refine his voice again and again and again and again. But imagine we didn't start hearing them till like Going Places or the Destiny album. Like, bruh, nobody could even come close to even trying to say anything about Michael, bruh, vocally. Like, that's just, But yeah, like this, even right here, I love this. Was just like, why you doing this, Mike? You don't got to do this, Mike. I love you. No. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, girl. Ooh!
Michael's talent as a musician allowed him to turn this raspiness in his voice to a unique and impressive musical identity.
I'm headed for the border. It's on my mind. Look in the view mirror. I got to be on time.
In our kind of work, we have to keep on and on. You just cannot sing once or twice a year. Then you lose your muscles. Then you lose the training, the habits, the reflexes.
After the Victory Tour, Michael Jackson took a long hiatus from singing. The voice is a muscle that, like other muscles, undergoes changes in its abilities when not used frequently. If a singer takes a break from singing for an extended period, their voices tend to get lower. But also, if one continues to sing outside of their range, that will also lower their voice. While Michael's voice lowering can't be pinpointed on one theme, we can identify that it's lower by how far he can push it. On Off the Wall and Thriller, Michael's highest belted note sat around high E.
When you're always up to no good, you really can't make a hater, so your tongue became a razor.
On Bad, the highest sung belt is a D.
I'll pick you up in my car and we'll paint the sky. The promise, baby, you'll love me
Bad Tour is Michael's first solo tour, and when he sings the music from the previous 2 albums, the keys are lowered. For example, Wanna Be Starting Something is lowered a full tone.
You wanna be starting something, you got to be starting something. I said you wanna be starting something, you got to be starting something. You wanna be starting something, you got to be starting something. You wanna be starting something.
My boy got low on that.
I took my baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street, they said she had a breakdown. I took my baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing she found. Down in the street, they said she had a breakdown.
From the new album, Dirty Diana has lines of high D.
She says there's no turning back. She's drumming Yana on. If you make me your star, because he's sleeping with me.
For live performance, the song is lowered by a minor third.
You'll never make me stay, so take your weight off of me. You'll never make me stay, so take your weight off of me. She says there's no turning back. She's drumming Yana on. There's no turning back. She's drumming Yana.
So it's safe to say that high D seems
Like,
to be
what are you
around his
saying, Mike?
limit. And based off how he's adjusting the keys of songs, the voice has dropped about a tone. Fans will often say, if one has to sing and dance, it's okay to lower the keys.
Each singer has to sing in the key that's comfortable for them, to make their best art. I think that is the single most important thing,
And that is correct. An artist should not be shamed for lowering the keys of songs so that they can sing them comfortably. If we compare Michael to artists who sing and dance simultaneously, such as Jackie Wilson, James Brown, and Tina Turner, they still dance while singing in their original keys. Or comparing Michael to Michael, why didn't that skill transfer over to an adult? So that's why we have to take into account how much the keys are being lowered. This is the chart for the different voice types. You can see that each respective male voice type sits about a third apart. For live performance, Michael is dropping the keys of his music by a major second and minor third, or the equivalent of an entire voice type.
I think you have to, if you have to keep dropping keys, then you need to go figure out why you have to keep dropping the key. I think, if you're on a 30-city tour, that's a different situation. You should probably drop keys to accommodate, but it's when you start dropping the keys and they just doesn't sound like the song anymore. That is just that's unacceptable. I don't think it's fair to your audience to do those things, or you start dropping and you can't even hit the note in the drop key. You really have to address. You really have to address why that is. And
but if you listen to Dirty Diana or Wanna Be Starting Something, he's going flat and missing the high notes in the dropped key.
He was dropping keys by a minor third and I was like, y'all don't understand how big of a drop that is. That's almost a different voice type,
Well, Michael Jackson wasn't he's just, that's not, he was a baritone.
If you're dropping the keys out of an entire voice type and missing the notes in the dropped keys, then maybe you're not a high voice. Michael still singing too high for comfort is solidified in the fact that he runs into voice problems again on this tour. The voice issues he runs into on this tour are important because it's the only tour that is sang live. Fans generally consider Baby Michael the singer, but adult Michael to be the musician. Compared to Thriller and Off the Wall, Bad is overproduced, said NPR in its original 1987 review of the album. While Bad ranks among Michael's quintessential albums, a common critique is the overproduction of the record. The wall of sound and layered stacking of harmonies are present throughout the entire album.
Speeding on the freeway, gotta get leeway. Speeding, I'm bad, jump on, really bad. You know I'm bad, I'm bad. You know
adding more elements into the overall production shifts the listener's focus from just his voice, but to the overall musical experience. Around the Bad era, Michael begins arranging his music in chunks. A sign of a connected voice is the ability to travel from one end of the range to the other without a break. Michael does this in the opening of ABC.
You went to school to learn, girl, things you never do.
He did it on Blame It on the Boogie.
My baby's always dancing, and wouldn't be a bad thing, but I don't get no loving, and that's no.
And he can do it on Wanna Be Starting
I
Something.
took my baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street.
In all of those songs, he travels from the bottom to the top of his range on a single freeze.
Yeah.
When you listen to songs on the Bad album, such as Smooth Criminal, all the low-range singing is done at once.
She was a neighbor. She ran underneath the table. He could see she was a neighbor. So she ran into the bedroom. She was struck down. It was her doom.
And then all the high-range singing is done at once.
Will you tell us that you're okay? At the other side of the window, and he struck you. I got shindo and he...
Famously, Mariah Carey also structures her music this way. What this does is that it implies a disconnect in the vocal range. Because there seems to be a disconnect in the vocal range, you'll notice that many of his vocal lines sit within a very small range and on a dominant note.
As I came into the window was the sound of a crescendo. And are you okay? Will you tell us that you're okay? At the other side of the window, and he struck you a crescendo and he...
How Michael is arranging his music from Bad onward is very similar to how he was arranging his music in the mid-70s when his voice was compromised due to puberty. While Michael is changing how he arranges his new music, he is also changing how he sings his old music. Legato means that everything is sung, tied together smoothly and connected.
Across the nighttime, the city winks a sleepless eye.
Staccato means the notes are sung shortened and detached from the other. You can hear that with Human Nature and Lovely One.
What are like some of the consequences? Like what trouble does someone get into straining too high, trying to be in an area that doesn't work?
They were young, in their 20s and things, but their voices suffered immensely. They ended up with huge warbles in the sound. They couldn't, the legato was gone. After a few years, it just took a toll on these little chords, pushing like that. I call it pushing, and pushing it where it's not supposed to go.
The inability to sing a phrase legato results from the voice being pushed too high. To hear how much the top of his voice has changed, listen to Wanna Be Starting Something. Comparing the high D's on the original recording.
I took my baby to the doctor with a fever, but nothing he found. By the time it's in the street.
To the high D's on Dirty Diana.
She's drumming, if you make me your star.
You will hear a significant increase in the rasp on the top notes. But all of these changes vocally and sonically work because Michael's music direction has changed. He's singing more rock-oriented material such as Come Together or Bad, where raspiness is appropriate and a trademark of the style.
Me coming for you, Mike. We just saying what it is. Like, we still love you. We love the music. I really wonder his direction into going to more rock influence was because of how his vocals changed. Like, if he could still sing like he could back on Off the Wall, well, we have gotten so many rock-influenced songs like A Dirty Diana, Give In To Me, Come Together. Like, would we have gotten that? I don't know. I was just saying, yeah, I know. I wonder.
Part of the genius of Michael Jackson is the fact that he completely rearranged the structures of his music, so the changes in his voice aren't that noticeable to listeners. And most importantly, the era is called bad, so the roughness or grittiness of the sound matches the album's overall aesthetic. Taking all of these into consideration, the chunking of registers in his songs, the increased raspiness in the voice, and the lowering of keys still point to him pushing the voice beyond its natural limits. In singing or any physical realm, you get about 15 to 20 years of high-quality performance, and that clock starts ticking when the major career starts. The Bad Tour concluded in the winter of 1989. In the winter of 1969, Diana Ross introduced Jackson 5. You can make a strong argument that the Bad Tour represents the end of Michael's high-quality singing years, and there is a possibility that Michael himself felt something as it concerned his voice, because he never intended to tour after the Bad Tour. But 3 years later, he returned for Dangerous. What stands out the most about the Dangerous tour is that he pulls the overproduction we hear on the Bad album into live performance. At the time, the Dangerous tour was said to be the biggest, most lavish, most expensive stage production ever attempted. If we learned anything from the Bad album, it is that if there's a lot more going on around Michael, it takes the focus off of his voice. This holds true on the Dangerous tour because there's a drastic decrease in the amount of live singing happening. So what could cause this? The most apparent thing upon listening to the Dangerous album is that the music is continuing to shift lower. Between
I don't mean this is a decline, it's lower. My bad, I didn't mean it. But also, I don't know if this is brought up here or not, but also the way Michael took care of his body. I mean, I've seen multiple videos of Michael talked about not eating properly. That's very important. You have to eat, nurture your body properly in order to perform at the level Michael was performing. And again, we're talking over 20 years by this point. Like, you're not eating, your body is going to have to it's going to have to figure out a way to compensate somehow. So, yeah, that's also probably why he can't sing at a certain level no more either.
Thriller and Dangerous, he has lost a fifth of range at the top of the voice. What's admirable about Dangerous is that he is now using the bottom of his voice more.
Get me out into the nighttime.
On previous albums, the low notes were always buried in the background, or they were sung with very little volume. By the Dangerous album, he's putting power and juice into the bottom of the voice, making that the music's focal point.
Remember the time?
I am the agony inside a dying head.
You will also notice that the voice is now raspier in all parts of the range.
No time to be tripping on me. Baby, walk out the door. You're so dangerous. Be laughing, girl, when I'm not around. I'll be okay.
This can only mean one thing. There is more vocal damage present.
Each day like yesterday. Go with it. Go with it. Jam. Okay. 11 you play?
How did he get around this? Again, with production. On a song such as Jam, you will hear that the voice is more buried under the music rather than on top of it, like some of his earlier recordings. And jam is also important because it continues that trend of staccato singing. Dot, 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 dot. Age could be a factor in Michael's voice beginning to center lower. Michael is now in his mid-30s, and that is around the age where a man's voice begins to settle. On the other hand, the rate at which his voice is dropping, the voice continuing to get raspier, means that continuous high-range singing is leading the charge in his voice changing and pushing it downward. Because, again, when he has to take this album on tour, he has another issue with nodules.
Some of it is technique. Some of it is that you just don't have the technique, the solid technique to be able to sustain any key. That's a whole other conversation. No shame, but like, it is true. Again, if you get into the studio and get you a good teacher, a good vocal coach.
If one keeps sustaining vocal injuries, then something is being done incorrectly. One should listen to his vocal warm-up with Seth Riggs to best understand how Michael's voice functions as a whole. You'll notice when Michael does scales on any vowel, it is all one volume, loud. The consequences of encouraging forte or loud singing is to change a boy soprano rapidly into a boy alto. They will generally sing alto equally loud because their vocal cords have lost their elasticity through overstraining. Alfred Bach, 1894.
I do know how to say this, though. What's strange is, I want to say, songs to where Michael actually is singing, I want to say Invincible. To me, he actually, History too. I feel like he was better on History and Invincible than he was on Bad and Dangerous. Like if you go to like Childhood, Smile, like I said, I know Marsha sung parts on Butterflies and Heaven Can Wait and things like that. But even then, you can hear it, but yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. It might be also because he didn't have to tour like that. I don't know.
As a younger child, he could switch from loud to soft singing because the voice had more elasticity. In a live or studio setting, you'll notice he can generally sing only very loud or in a whisper. In singing, a straight tone is often produced by excessive tension of the throat and facial muscles that ultimately may diminish the efficiency and health of the voice. If you ever watch Michael sing as an adult, you will notice sometimes he uses the head or the jaw muscles, the muscles in the face, to move a note.
It really is so important not to try to use those muscles before they are fully developed, because if you do that, the tendency is to use muscles in the neck and muscles that are not there for that. Those muscles are there for chewing. Absolutely. And and I'm sure that you have noticed as well, that one can see rather young singers that participate and the jaw shakes. That's because the emphasis is being put on the wrong muscles. And they probably started doing it much too early.
Earlier, we discussed that much of Michael's singing is done on a straight tone.
I just gotta say, people sleep I have to say people sleep on that. Was it Triumph? Triumph album. The time waits for no one. That song, bruh. Lonely in my darkened room. Like, Michaels. Oh, man. Yeah.
Or if there is vibrato, it will generally have a pulse or rattle-like quality.
Does he do it that way? I like living this way. I like loving this way. See there indeed. Oh, there is a window. Again, I better all day long.
A deep, even vibrato is a sign of a relaxed voice. You'll hear the difference when Riggs instructs Michael to have vibrato on his notes. And he struggles to do it. Something else worth mentioning from this vocal warm-up is that Michael consistently struggles to match pitch. As he ascends the scale, he's generally beneath the appropriate note. If we go back to Even the Bad tour, you'll notice he tends to fall flat on a lot of the middle to high range notes. If one consistently falls flat, it is another example of the body and the voice being at its limits. Michael wants to reach the note. His voice wants to reach the note, but the body cannot support it and is usually reached by some kind of forcing. As he reaches the notes F, G, A, and B, you can see his body physically tightens to force the notes up. Struggling to have vibrato or falling flat again all point to Michael not relaxing. So why is he not relaxing? It's because he is placing the voice. The ah sound is known as a nasal vowel. Singing on nasal sounds shifts the focus of the voice higher for a higher, lighter, brighter sound. Ultimately, this helps make high notes easier to reach. This was a technique he acquired when recording the earliest Jackson albums. In phrases such as "think happy," you can see he places a lot of emphasis on the nasal ah sound. Placing the voice in the nasal cavity changes the quality of the voice, but altering the shape of the nose or face does the same.
I've had no plastic surgery on my face, just my nose. It helped me breathe better so I can hit higher notes.
Throughout his career, Michael constantly changed the shape of his nose. And something you'll notice is that as his nose got smaller, his speaking voice also began to get deeper.
I like to perform myself. I like all of them. Because you go in the studio, bring the people in to see you. It's a hard situation. It is. And it's something I have to put up with. I think it's wonderful. If that's what they want to do, and it's a good thing. And sometimes I want to sneak into places and not have any hoopla.
Oh boy, sometime after Thriller, Or run off the wall through.
And as we've tracked with his music, the range on the albums gets lower. It is said that Michael eventually developed nasal cripples, meaning the nose has been done so many times that there's no nose to breathe through. This is important because the breath is the basis of all singing. Yes. If Michael can't breathe, then he can't sing.
Yes.
Jackson's fans unanimously agree that the History Tour is Michael not at his best. The show is mostly lip-synced, and when he does sing live, there are good days. However, there are days where he sounds like this.
This boat like the beauty queen from a movie scene. I say don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one.
In the mid-70s, Michael went to Gene Carn to solve the issue with cracking.
Michael was having voice change problems. He might have been 20 then. I don't know how old he was.
76, he was 18.
He confided in me that he was cracking. There were certain notes on certain songs that he would crack. We worked on his changing the enunciation sometimes, changing where he placed notes.
And the technique they developed for him was placing the voice and modifying vowels.
So the C could throw you, so just be careful that you keep it as pure as you can and drop your jaw on O. Is a cold, and if it throws you too much, you can use a goal, put a G on it. It'll sound like a C.
This is also a technique he practiced with Seth Riggs. If Michael was placing the voice in the nose and he doesn't have a nose, that means he has to sing and speak with an open throat. Singing with an open throat also means singing where the vocal damage occurred. As we have seen, the speaking voice has dropped as Michael's nose has gotten smaller. Once we have reached a place...
But again, I must point out also, because he's performing way more than he was, I would even say, in his teens. By the time he get to Victory Tour, he put so much emphasis on his performance that his voice is just shot. And again, it's also important to take care. Michael, for some reason, didn't like to eat. Nurture his body, and also you got to think about this, what he was consuming in terms of being able to sleep. That also is not good. So there's a lot of different things. The fact that we got Michael the way we did is actually remarkable, because we're lucky. Like, we got Michael the way we did from bad to history, because his body was shot. Like, he couldn't even sleep. Like, if your body can't sleep and rest, like, so yeah, we're actually very lucky. Like, we got what we got. I ain't gonna hold you.
Where the nose has been completely compromised. You will notice from this point forward, you'll see there are times when Michael speaks in public and we begin to hear what Michael fans call his real voice or his deep voice.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly humbled by this award.
One thing in life you must understand.
Which doesn't sound much different than when he's having a bad night on tour. The centerpiece of the History Tour is Earth Song. This song is important because it shows how much the quality of the middle and upper range has declined. In this song, he handles the top of his range very similarly to Will You Be There? Once you reach this point, voice doctors and teachers will call this screaming. Aggressive shouting and yelling at the top of your lungs has a traumatic effect on the vocal cords. Essentially, the vocal cords are being violently banged together and blasted with excessive amounts of escaping air. The vocal cords have now lost their protective coating that naturally reduces friction as the cords rub together. For reference, compare this to understand what Michael's vocal cords feel when he does this. Try this exercise. Repeatedly clap or rub your hands together for 10 seconds, or until enough time has passed to create an uncomfortable friction between both hands. Do you feel the discomfort? That is how his vocal cords feel. And that is why we've never heard this in live performance. As it concerns the history tour, many fans will say he was sick, because it is important to note that Michael as an adult was not the healthiest individual. It was reported that he underate for most of his life. The kind of singing and dancing Michael likes and wants to do requires a strong, healthy body. What people don't understand is that as much damage was done to Michael's body dancing as it was singing. Professional dancers use special purpose-built floors to lessen the impact of jumps and leaps on the body. When he does this, all of that impact and stress is felt in an already weaker body. And then you add on his battle with lupus. Lupus.
Thank you. Like, also he's dealing with that as well. Like my poor baby Michael, man. My poor baby Michael, man. Golly, boy.
It was reported that he underate for most of his life. The kind of singing and dancing Michael likes and wants to do requires a strong, healthy body. What people don't understand is that as much damage was done to Michael's body dancing as it was singing. Professional dancers use special purpose-built floors to lessen the impact of jumps and leaps on the body. When he does this, all of that impact and stress is felt in an already weaker body. And then you add on his battle with lupus. Lupus is an autoimmune disease in which the body mistakenly attacks healthy tissues and organs. Toni Braxton is another famous singer who has lupus. When you compare her to her younger self,
and I know I can't pretend that I won't die if you decide you won't see me again. That I won't die, you decide won't see me again.
She struggles consistently to get through phrases of songs because the muscles she needs to sing, such as the lungs, are weaker. And as it stands today, Toni has said her health will not allow her to tour. And when she does perform, she often has to rely on lip syncing. If we're going to use Toni Braxton's lupus battle as a gauge for Michael, there is a chance that Michael was physically unable to sustain long periods of singing, which could be why the amount of lip syncing continuously increased since the 80s. His typical performances were so physically demanding that he would lose around 5 to 10 pounds of water weight in a single evening. With the amount of singing and dancing he had to do, and taking his health into consideration, Michael was more than likely faced with a choice of whether to prioritize singing or dancing. When you weigh the options, it makes sense as to why his performance style shifted slowly from being more singing-based to more performance-based.
Love you, Mike!
1901. December 7th, 1903.
I forgot what it was.
But given the state of his voice and physical health, it's not surprising that he retreated from the spotlight after this tour.
Listen, life, divorces, marriages, deaths, all those things change you. This is not far from the heart. Like, all of these things are attached. It's not separate. It's all in the same wheelhouse. So everything affects that.
You might ask yourself, if Michael Jackson had all of these voice and physical issues, why didn't he just change his technique? Muscle memory is the ability to reproduce a particular movement without conscious thought, and it's acquired through frequent repetition. Michael has been singing one way since he was a child. High and loud.
High and loud.
So all he knows is to push, pull, and stretch the voice to its limits.
I tried to convince him to just change the notes and the phrases, because he was full of ideas. But he was just stuck on certain figures that he had contrived in his head as part of his plan.
His muscle memory.
We worked. Yeah.
The same thing applies to his dancing. When you look at Michael's singing and performance style as a whole, there is very little restraint. It's 100% in every aspect. If we compare Michael to singers of classical music, many of them retire after 25 to 30 years. The difference between a classical singer and Michael Jackson is that a classical singer starts their major career at 30 and retires at 60. Michael began his major career at 9 and retired essentially before 40. Michael's final album, Invincible, showcases a unique sound for Michael. He continues the trend of singing lower music that we see with all of the other albums. But on this album, most of the singing falls between low A and middle A. This range is particularly associated with the baritone voice. What we notice the most is that Michael's voice is less raspy compared to all the albums before this, where the music sat.
What was I just saying? I know Michael, bro. What did I just say? Invincible sounds better vocally than even from obviously some of the history, from bad to dangerous. It's like I don't know. It probably just had the lack of having to perform, being able to just relax in whatever his tone is, and not forcing high and loud. Now it's like, baby, you 40 now. You can't be doing that. Like you gotta be relaxing so you can hear it, you can feel it, and that's probably why he never performed. You might be like, I ain't doing all that.
Much higher.
You wanna stay alive, better do what you can, so beat it. I like the groove of your walk, your talk, your dress. I tried to keep my sanity. I waited patiently.
Can a teacher change at will the pitch of a voice and turn a baritone to a tenor, or a contralto into a mezzo-soprano, or a mezzo-soprano into a soprano? The experiment has been tried, and when the subject has been young and vigorous, a short success has seemed to justify the attempt. But if not stopped in time, the final result has been inevitable ruin of the voice. Manuel Garcia, 1908. Throughout his adult career, he sang in the mezzo-soprano range, then transitioned down to the range of a contralto, then transitioned to the range of a tenor, and none of these ranges were sustainable. Looking at how everything tracks, Michael was eventually going to have to sing where his voice naturally sat.
All you got to do is walk
While some people will say, well, Michael's tone didn't sound like a baritone.
If I start getting paid to sing R&B, then I'll definitely work on my falsetto a lot more than I do when I'm singing opera. Probably the biggest difference is that I use less support when I sing R&B. I use very little support except for the high notes, and it kicks in just a little bit. But when I'm singing opera, you have to have really solid technique and breath support in order to be able to be heard over an entire choir and orchestra.
Operatic baritone Lucas Meacham demonstrated in an exercise that pop music uses less space when singing. When he uses less space when singing pop music, he can create a lighter, brighter sound. And he says he can take that sound up to high F.
Practice room, I can sing from low D all the way up to high F, but these notes are not produced in a classically trained way.
F is also the highest note Michael was able to take his voice up to, post-puberty. Here is how Meacham sounds singing opera. Here is how he sounds singing pop.
Just in the nick of time.
Compared to Michael, it doesn't sound that much different. The tale of Michael Jackson is one about creating beauty from a difficult situation. Educators often caution that singing as a child will produce unmusical noises. Yet these sounds became linked to some of the most exceptional music ever produced by one of the most remarkable musicians who have ever lived. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Until next time. To support this channel and continuing to provide quality and accessible music education programming, please consider donating to the links in the description or in the pinned comment. Thank you.
Again, that is Black Music Archives. Yeah, man, that was broken down to a T. For those, for anybody out there that been wondering, because it was bothering my soul. I think Keke Palmer had a video earlier this year or late last year when she was kind of making fun and just having fun. Like, how did Michael go from human nature reaching out to like how that happened? And it was irking my soul. Like, why did Michael's voice change? Like, why did his voice, but his technique and approach to how he was singing change? Like, why did that happen? And I stumbled upon this video earlier, previously, but yeah, it's just Michael for all of his adolescent years or prior to adolescence, singing high and loud is why his voice dramatically changed by the time you get to Bad. And even in that, his genius and his technique of how to adjust to his limitations now vocally still was able to create some of the greatest music we ever heard. And also, again, he could have just performed and decided not to jump around and just, if he just would have been more like a typical R&B singer and just sing, we could have probably still got his vocal performances the way, we would want. But even then, Michael still was great vocally. He still had his great moments. Like, I still love his performance for Sammy Davis Jr. You Were There. I still love the way he sung Earth Song in '96. Like, the body, the mind is all, like Sis said, the body and mind is all connected. So you got to make sure to take care of that. You got to eat right. You got to rest. You got to make sure not to stretch or strain your voice so much and push through so much. But still in that, like I said, Michael still created the greatest songs we've ever heard. So, and not to mention Lupus having all these ailments on his body, not to mention still dealing with the burns and the damage that did. I said it before. It's remarkable we got Michael the way we did, man. Anybody else, we would. But like, comment, subscribe, share all things are the things. Let me know if you want to me to continue to do watch-alongs like these. There's another one for Whitney Houston, to which is very, very, very intriguing. So let me know if you want me to do a watch-along and reaction to that as well. Like, comment, subscribe, share all the things are the things. Ain't gotta go home. Do gotta get to step in. Peace.
I know